So this is one of the barges right here that landed in somebody's yard. Look at this. A hoarder house. All right, I got a mask up. You got the door open?
Down and then potentially beyond.
What are the roads?
I had a guy that came out here to do the junk out. He walked in here, was like, peace, and he walked out.
So you're trying to navigate how to buy a house, and you're wondering what should I not buy? The houses to never buy. So in this video, I'm going to talk about that, and if you watch my last video of houses to never buy, I think it was like 200,000 views, so I had to go in depth on this because I know y'all are out there trying to figure out all the landmines that can happen in buying a house, and it costs you thousands, tens of thousands of dollars if you mess up. Got to make sure you have good quality guidance on this, and I'm here to help you. So let's get right to it. So go back and watch the last video if you have not. I talked about the types of houses, as in structure builds that you shouldn't go after. Like, for example, flat roof houses, mobile homes can be tricky, modular homes can be tricky. It's all an insurance game. Houses are insurance games. I talked about some of the flood issues, fire hazards that you can run into, the structure stability of certain houses, and kind of know what you're looking at and knowing when to walk away. So the first one I want to talk about right here, right now, is going to be flood zones. And this can be a lot of different types of flood zones. This could be you live in a basin, you live on the beach, you live in some type of flash flood environment, something with the Corps of Engineers has floodgates that they randomly let open. Any type of situation where they might have to disperse water and you happen to be in that area, your mortgage is going to force you to carry flood insurance in some of these situations, especially like on the beach or living near the water, near the river, things like that. You got to be aware of these things that you might have to carry flood insurance on top of your home insurance. Somebody's yard, look at this. It washed up from over there, all the way from the 3 Mile Bridge. This is the same type of barge that took out the 3 Mile Bridge, the Garcon Point Bridge, hit the NAS Bridge, and almost took out the I-10 Bridge. That is nuts. Can't believe they let that happen. And know that at any given time, whether you're AE or any of those type of flood zones, that your house could wash away. And knowing that what the 500-year flood mark or whatever is in your area is important, because you could wake up and be staring at water coming up your front door. I have seen here on the Gulf Coast literally water up to people's doorknobs. I've seen it happen in an instant. We got a rain one time and it flooded half of downtown Pensacola. I think it got like 30 inches in like 24 hours randomly, just on a random summer night, came down and just flooded everywhere. I think it was summer, it could have been more. My point is that it was just a random event. Flooded a lot of houses. It was unexplainable. So you got to understand these things before you buy. Go to the FEMA map, scroll around, look at the address and see, and have an idea of whether you're going to have to carry that insurance or if that insurance is going to be enough. Hey, it's one thing to carry flood insurance. Recuperating from a flooded house is totally different. Okay, yeah, you got a check in your hand, but you don't have anything else. And you got to think about this. On the Gulf Coast, living by the water, on the beach, it's a big deal. And when you're staring down the barrel of a Cat 3 hurricane, it is a big question mark to whether your house is going to stand up for it. Are you off grade? Do you have a seawall? Is the seawall in good shape? If the seawall buckles, is the sand going to melt away? Is the water going to flow through your house or around your house? Lots of things to think about. And these are the situations that you got to be cognizant. The next one I want to talk about is new builds. Okay, new builds can be like, wow. I am deathly afraid of buying a new build for myself, and I'll tell you why. Because I have sat there and watched some of these builders throw these houses up, and they sit open for weeks, months, and sometimes you see them and they've got straight up mold on them, and they're closing the walls in, or they'll frame it out and then throw a roof on it, and it rained the day prior, and then they throw the walls up, and you know that all that humidity is trapped in that house. or that you see the wood that they're framing is so soft that the nails are literally splintering the wood because they're putting so many nails in it. There's just so many things that I've seen in some of these new builds that just frighten me. And that the builder will always try to scare you into, oh, you don't need a home inspection, or oh, we won't let the home inspector on the roof, or oh, we won't have this, or we won't do that. You've got a year to tell us all the things that are wrong with it. Do not do that, okay? Make sure you go through a step-by-step process. If you're looking to buy a new build, go out there and kind of walk the area prior to buying the property, like when it's getting framed. And then once it's together, make sure you get a home inspection. If you can get a pre-closed wall inspection, like before they put the sheetrock on, that'd be great. And then a post. Make sure you go through all the process of making sure it is dress right dress. Because I tell you, you don't know what's in those walls after it's up. And then once you close and that builder takes off or goes out of business or goes bankrupt or they reorganize their structure, you might never see them again. And you've got this $400,000 hunk of junk that nobody is willing to really help you with. I've seen many home builders that there's a sinkhole or there is some type of erosion problem in the neighborhood, and sometimes they throw these new builds up on some pretty random ground, like here in Navarre, like a lot of that's a swamp. Okay, Gulf Breeze, a lot of it's a swamp. You got to know where you're buying these new builds. It doesn't mean that it's correct. I've seen many septic tanks uphill from the actual house itself, and those can cause problems. Make sure you do all your inspections on new builds. Make sure you have a good agent, and don't just go to the builder's agent on duty and think you're not going to be taken advantage of. Those contracts for new builds are built for the builder to win, not you. I highly suggest you have your own agent in the deal. Don't just go with the other side, because the builder will pay for the agent, as in the buyer's agent. So just be cognizant of that. Have your own counsel. And if you're trying to buy a house that's different, like a concrete sphere, the UFO house, some of these odd different houses, A-frames, some weird A-frames, insurance companies just don't like to do, and they can be hard to bind insurance because they're different. Insurance companies don't like to take risk on different things. Sometimes the ability to replace it, rebuild it, refix it is tough. Like, let's say it's a complete concrete house and it catches fire, and let's say the concrete cracks or something. To be able to fix that concrete sphere correctly with the rebar in it and everything that has to happen, like let's say a barge hits it. Don't laugh, because at the beginning of this video you saw a barge sitting in somebody's front yard. That was a real situation here in Pensacola when it hit all our bridges and it landed in people's yards and it hit people's houses. There was actually a big lawsuit about it. I'm pretty sure it hit actually somebody's house. May or may not. Don't sue me for that. I'm just saying that is a possibility. During Hurricane Sally, a sailboat landed right here in the front of our houses. So if, let's say, it hit one of these odd structures, it's hard to fix it. Like some of these concrete dome houses you see around Pensacola. Insurance companies didn't really want to touch it because of the things I'm explaining, and made financing them very tough. So when you go to resell it, being that most the properties on the beach are financed, it can be tough, even though it's probably bulletproof and it's probably the way you should build a house. It's hard to convince the underwriter this. Also, I want to say on this video, I am not a home inspector, or I'm not a contractor. I'm just a guy that does real estate a lot and has been in a lot of deals. And these are the things I've seen and things that I've actually come upon. And I know these answers because I've actually had to pay for the advice. And I'm just trying to help you out on your journey here, because nobody else is going to tell you these things, and I'm here to tell them to you. And for those out there that don't like my advice, well, don't sue me, but I'm just trying to help somebody. Hire your own professional, hire your own advice, hire your own lawyer, hire an attorney, hire a home inspector, do your own research, but do your research, and you can base it off of the things I'm trying to tell you. Houses that are off grade with uneven floors. I'm going to give you a breakdown on that real quick. Go to the bathrooms, anywhere water is near, and look and see if there's any broken tile, cracks, sloping softness, sponginess, weirdness, anything out of the ordinary might mean you could be a lot of random things. Either be termite damage, it could be water damage, it could be just wood rot, it could just be the house settling. A lot of times in old houses you'll see houses have settled and you will have uneven floors. These are all things that you need to look for. If a house shouldn't have a major slope, cracked walls, like not hairline cracks, like plaster cracks, but like within like a good, weird difference when you see that crack. I mean, it's defined, especially around doors, especially around bathroom doors, around outside doors, any door that sticks. Be weirded out by that. There's a reason why the door is sticking. Either the frame has changed or the door's changed or the floor's changed. Something's changed. Not unless it's been painted 25 times. But just be cognizant of weird floors, especially like here's one on slabs. Like if you go into a property and it's on like a sloping hill or the backyard's real spongy or it was built kind of like around a creek bed or something, sometimes you can see slabs. And like I went in one the other day and there was tile in the hall and there was a hairline crack down the entire hall on the tile. I knew that there was something wrong with that foundation. I saw another one last year where there was 2 giant oak trees to the left and right of the house. And I got a rule of thumb is you never buy a house with a giant oak tree directly by the house, because if you mirror those limbs underneath the house, the giant oak tree roots are underneath your house and they will crack your slab. I don't care what anybody says. Sooner or later, your slab is going to be jacked up. And this house had been fractured right down the center of the hallway, all the way into the living room. And the agent swore up and down there was nothing wrong with it. I'm like, bro, I can see a giant crevice in the floor. And so when you see these things, make sure you take a step back. You either walk away, get it for a reduced price, or you make sure you have a good home inspector or engineer come in and check that floor. I mean, there's sometimes you can, if you're a pretty savvy investor, you can wind up getting these things for a deal and you can fix them. But I don't say that for the normal person just trying to buy a house. Like, you got to be an expert at some of this stuff. But with that, just be careful. Structures and floors can be your worst nightmare. It can cost you tons and tons of money. Okay, houses on bad geo landscapes. Okay, we're looking at massive sloping lots, whether it's to or from, or let's say your house is here and the house in front of you is like up here, and then the rest of the houses are above you. All that water is going to come down on you if it has not been engineered properly. And I saw a house the other day where all the water came down into the backyard straight into the house, and there was nowhere for the water to go. It either came in the house or diverted around the edges of the house. And if you've ever been in a hurricane and seen 30 inches of rain come down in a day, that's going straight in your house. And you got to be cognizant of this. Even if you're not on a flood zone, you can get some weird anomalies with rain and you're going to get wet. Especially it could go in your garage. It could erode the yard to the point where the house could be unstable. I saw one the other day. I see a lot of weird stuff. I saw one the other day where the water came off the roof, down a gutter, and it was going underneath the slab of the driveway. And it wound up eroding underneath the slab of the driveway and cracking the driveway. And then it had started working its way underneath the house because the house was on a dramatic decline into a golf course. I mean, it was like the water just kept sweeping underneath the side of the house to the point where it could like actually settle the house. Liquefaction is a really big deal. I think that's how you pronounce it. Where the sand gets so liquefied in a storm that the house will just start sinking. I saw another one in East Hill during the storm started to sink. The trees started sinking. We parked a truck in the doggone yard and it sank because it was just so much water coming down at one time. So be cognizant of sloping yards, sloping driveways, water coming in on that slope. Water goes downhill. And if you're at the bottom of that hill, you are going to catch it, and vice versa. Okay, here's one that I wanted to talk about. Illicit street pharmaceuticals. I don't want to say the D word because they'll demonetize me here on YouTube. If there has been narcotics in the house, and they are hard narcotics, as in the fumigating kind, as in ones will start with M, ones will start with C, those type of bad narcotics, don't buy the house, because the fume, especially if they were cooking it in there, is in the walls, it's in the air conditioning unit, it's in the vents, it's in the duct systems, it's in everything. If you go in there and you find a New York, you know what pipe somewhere, and you find one under the house, around the house, just don't buy the house. I know some of the flippers are going to comment down below, and if you are capable of doing that, buy that, pull that off, you do you. But for me, I don't buy those houses because of the reasons I just stated. You will never get those chemicals out of that house. It'll be a danger for the next person. If it's in the air duct system, like, hey, you're going to have to rip that stuff out of there to do it correctly. Especially if somebody has died in the house. Try not to buy a house that somebody has died in and decomposed in. Believe it or not, that happens a lot. Got quite a few buddies that have had people die in one of their houses. They didn't find them for weeks, month, okay? And they had to cut all the air system out, repaint the house, cut the floor out, had to do a lot of things. Cost a lot of money. Cost them $25,000 to bring that house back up to where it should be. You couldn't get the smell out. I've been in a lot of houses as a real estate agent where I know somebody died in the house. You can smell it. And then they don't want to tell you because in some states they don't have to tell you. Kind of like fire. Don't buy one that's been on fire. I talked about that in the last video. But if there has been narcotics in the house to the point where it was one where they went to use the drugs, you will have a lot of problems. People get sick in the house. Just don't do it. Don't buy that house. Don't buy that house. So ones where they were selling drugs in it, don't. If you're going to move into that house, here's another one. Here's another one. People are going to hate me on this one. I know this video is way too long. But if there was a lot of drug traffic, can't believe I just said that. There was a lot of the word D. There was a lot of narcotics being done in the house. The cops probably have a history on the house, and they're going to think you did it for a long time. Sorry if you're law enforcement, but they keep a history on these houses, and you got to deal with that too. You got people coming back to the house months, years later, thinking they can purchase from the house. There's a lot of issues. Just be cognizant of it. If you find bullet holes in the house, okay, be cognizant of that. My buddy had a bullet hole go through one of his rentals the other day. Bullet went right flying through it. So these are all indicators to be very careful of, and they happen. I'm not trying to steer. I'm just trying to educate. I'm here to educate you. I am not an insurance agent. I am here to help you out. These things I have seen, and they cost people a lot of money, and I'm trying to save you from having those problems. So be careful of that you walk in a house, the air's not on, you don't know the air system is defaultive, or there's been chemicals in the vents and the air ducts, and you might wind up having to tear the whole thing out, or you wind up getting sick and you can't figure out why. Okay, so the next one, houses that have termites, or have had termites, or could have termites. I mean, if you see things like dust around window seals, you see the little tubes going up the sides of the house, get a WDO inspection and hold them to the fire. Now, sometimes if they're in the walls, like behind the sheetrock, it's hard to see them. Maybe you could hear them. WDO inspectors have their way, but they get in the walls and they're really hard to find until you find them. They can come up the most weird places, like where I'm plumbing, and make their way up underneath stuff. You could have one piece of ivy hanging down and they make their way up. And then once they're in, they do weird stuff. They can totally destroy a house quick. Now, some termites take a long time, and they could be just one part of the house, like a corner or whatever. Or they could be the ones that work real fast and destroy an entire house really fast. And it can be time consuming to fix. And let's say if they get on the main joists, sometimes you gotta cut the whole floor out and redo the joists. So be cognitive of WDOs. You'll see pole beetles, which usually, I know people are going to argue with me about this, but if they're not too bad, your house is fine. Just look like little pinholes in the wood. But I've bought a couple houses with pole beetles, and it takes a long time for them to really hurt a house. But just have it treated and move on. But have it inspected and make sure the damage isn't too bad. Now, roaches, rats, squirrels, and raccoons, things like that, squirrels can destroy your wiring. Woo! Don't you try to bite me. Don't you try to bite me, son. Open the door, Samantha. He's going outside. Thought he was going to stay. He thought he was going to stay.
They are kind of cute.
I know, look at that tail, though. Holy smokes. In your house. Destroy your HVACs real fast. And it is wild how they will just, I mean, you look like 20 grand, 15, 20 grand to redo an HVAC system, the ducting. And they'll just tunnel through that stuff and take up, you know, a cool spot in your attic, you know. And squirrels, bad. Rats, the urine and the feces that get in the walls. You got to cut the sheetrock out and suck it all out, and it smells terrible. And then they eat stuff up. They'll eat your PEX pipes. They'll eat the wiring. Like, they do gnarly stuff. So be cognitive of rat problems because that smells tough to get out. Cats. Okay. I've had probably 3 houses where there was 20 or 30 cats in these houses, and the urine, the musk, the everything in it, you can't get the smell out of the house. I've seen whole houses have to have their floors cut out from cats destroying the floors and the walls, spraying on the walls and everything. Look, I'll run the video right here. This one right here, this is what that's from. This was from cats, cat food. The lady was a hoarder. It was like 30 cats in the house. This house had to be reduced to almost the ground. If you want to lose a property value fast, have bad neighbors, okay? Bad dogs, bad neighbors, drugs, violence, screaming and shouting, people that are just like, you're just like, oh my gosh, nothing will scare off a buyer faster than that. So your resale value is going through the floor, and you don't want to live next to that. Right? I mean, unless you get the property really cheap and you're trying to leverage the bad neighbor to get it at a cheap price and then try to get rid of the bad neighbor, that rarely works, okay? I usually bad neighbors are there, either they're a tenant and the landlord is vacant and distant and doesn't care and he got it for stupid cheap and he just lets them stay there. But they will make your life a living nightmare, and they can be dangerous, and you are not going to be able to resell that property when there is a giant, you know, whatever in the front yard, and trash everywhere, and it smells, and they're not cutting the grass, and all these things. Be wary of bad neighbors. Whatever it may be, they come in all types. But if you go to a property and you look to the left or right and your spider senses go off, that happens for everybody else that comes up there. And your resale value, if they're still there, is going to be very hard. Keep that in mind. Bad neighbors will lose you tens of thousands of dollars fast. Not to mention your sanity. Okay, I'm going to make a whole video on this one. Mobile homes, modulars. Mobile homes are really tough. South Florida has a lot of them. Up here in Northwest Florida, we don't do a whole bunch of them. Some mortgage lenders, some lenders, they don't like to lend on mobile homes. You got a difference between single wides, double wides. You got big single wides. You got big double wides. You got small single wides. You've got them strapped down, blocked down, on pylons, on slabs. Like, there's a lot of different things that can happen with a mobile home. You got roofs that are weird. You got insurance companies that don't want to buy. Sometimes the price point's so low that they don't want to give a loan for it, or the insurance is tough because of the price point. It's hard to get an insurance agent to actually write the policy. They can just be tricky, and you got to know how to navigate that and know how to finance it. And if you're buying it with cash, that's a different story. That's all on you. But know when you are going to buy a mobile home that resale is going to be tricky, because like I just said, all those things that I just said apply for when you go to sell it, and the buyer has to do the same thing. As they get older, they don't tend to hold their value as long. So you got to know these things. Mobile homes are tricky, and you got to know a lot about mobile homes, especially if you're an agent out there trying to sell mobile homes. They're a big learning curve. And South Florida has a lot of them, but it's totally different than what we have up here. We deal with mostly actual single family stick built, block built, you know, etc. houses, beach houses. So just be cognizant if you're buying a trailer or a trailer park that you're going to have to figure these things out, what lenders like and what insurance agents like, because ultimately they're the game and they hold the cards. They set the market. Add to the weird landscapes, if you live in a fire zone, if you live in a mudslide zone, if you live in a sinkhole area, if you live in any of these places that have some type of environmental risk, it's kind of like flood zones. Same thing. And you got to be cognizant that you're buying in a fire zone, or you're buying into a mud zone or a water zone or a snow, tornado alley, all these things. Know that you could have these problems. I know I could get hit by a hurricane. I know I could get hit by a tornado. I know that I could get hit by a lot of things. Nothing I can do about it. But I know the risk. I didn't go into it not knowing the risk. If you live on Navarre Beach or you live on some of these little, like Uno Island, you know that Dolphin Island, you know that you could get crushed real fast or get caught out there with your family. I know lots of people that rode the storm out on Pensacola Beach. So be cognizant of this. Okay, so the next one I'm going to say gut jobs. When people say gut jobs, I've done some gut jobs. They're dirty, they're nasty, they're time consuming. And if you're not handy with a gut job, like let's say you're just a normal husband, wife with no experience and you want to gut a house and flip it, you're in for a learning curve, because you're going to find electrical that you didn't think about. I call it the 10% rule. You're going to find plumbing that you didn't know about. You're going to find termites you didn't know about. You're going to find a lot of things. And you got to know how to frame. You got to know how to fix electrical. Even if it's just minor electrical, you got to know how to fix plumbing. And in most municipalities, like, you can go, if you own it in your name, go pull your own permit and do this work. And the inspector will tell you if you're wrong. You can go do that. And I don't care what any of these people say. You can go pull your own permit as a homeowner in most places. You can learn it on YouTube. You can go do it correctly. Have an inspector come behind you and see if it's correct, and you save yourself a lot of money. But you got to kind of be able to do this with these large gut job projects, or you're going to be in a money pit. So stay away from gut jobs if you're not really savvy, or if you want to get savvy, do one. I mean, when I bought this house, I didn't know how to do anything, and I bought it to learn. And I got to where I could do it all. And then the next one was easier, and the next one easier. And you know when contractors are bluffing you or blowing smoke up your butt, because they will take you for a song if you don't know what you're talking about. Ultimately, you got it. This is a learning business. Real estate is a learning thing constantly. And you always got to stay a step ahead of everybody else. And you got to know more than everybody else to be good at it. And that's what I had to do. So stay away from gut jobs unless it's already gutted and you can walk in and tell what's wrong with it, because the demolition can be dirty, nasty, and dangerous. So we'll talk about seawalls. I talked about it in the geographical one, but seawalls can come in a lot of different ways. They can actually be like a land wall, like in a backyard, you got an uneven drop off and you built a wall and you filled in the dirt and that. Be cognizant of that, as if you get a big storm or whatever, those things can wash away and your whole yard can go off a cliff. Be cognitive of seawalls on the beach. If it's your main line of defense that your entire front yard could just wash out to sea, be cognitive of that. Those things are expensive to build, and you know, some places have permitting and estuary and environmental like things around what you can build as a seawall. You got to be cognizant of that stuff. You just got to know when you see a seawall, have it inspected if you don't know what you're talking about. Have know everything about your seawall. You really have to be savvy on some of these properties, or have a great team, real estate agent, engineer, like all these people in place, home inspector, to know what you're looking at, because sometimes the water can just come in and just take things away. I mean, if you saw what happened on Perdido Key after Hurricane Ivan, it turned 20-foot dunes into a sand slick. You could see for 6 miles because there wasn't one hump in the ground. Just wiped the whole thing out. So just know this, and know that seawalls can get damaged. Build a good one. Figure out how you would fix it if something did happen, and do your best. Okay, if you go into a house and it's missing walls where walls used to be very aware of that. Like, let's say, people remove the kitchen wall, or people remove the living room wall, or all things like this, and you're on an off-grade house, know that weight has to be dispersed somewhere else, right? Well, they're on pilings, and all weight goes to the ground. So know that when you took a wall away, you destabilized something in the house, and if you don't replace that with a beam or something like that, that house is now weaker. And in a hurricane, your house does like this, and it flexes. And if that house was meant to have a wall there, well, do the math. That's why you start seeing or a ceiling starting to sag. You start seeing cracks in the ceiling. If you walk into a house, these random cracks in certain places, or you see sheetrock that's not quite patched properly, there used to be a wall there. Be cognizant of it. Like, you're not always gonna see a permit for them doing this. Have it inspected and do your due diligence. And if it's not sagging and there's not any you don't see any problems on the top, or even if you crawl underneath it, be cognizant of it, that maybe it was done correctly. Because there's no way really on an old house to find a permit for some of this stuff. Like in the state of Florida, after 10 years, permits just kind of went away. And they're trying to add them back, but good luck with that. You got to just look at the house and be like, okay, it looks right. Okay, we did our inspections. There's no humps in the floor, cracks in the ceiling. The opening is not sagging. Okay, we're probably good. But be cognizant if there's a wall missing, was it structural? Am I going to have a problem later? Ask these things and you should be good. All right, so to wrap this video up, I'm going to give you my list of things here that I have come upon that keep me up at night when I buy a flip. Okay, Chinese drywall. Go and research Chinese drywall. If you walk into a house and it smells like sulfur, might be Chinese drywall. If you walk into a house and you see the electrical panel box and it's rusted, might be Chinese drywall. It has like a sulfuric thing in it. Comment down below if you know about this than me. But if it has some type of sulfuric whatever in the sheetrock, and it came from China, it was faulty, and some houses were rehabbed with it, and it cost you thousands of dollars, okay, to re-sheetrock a house. And sometimes you don't know it unless your home inspector catches it. So if it's in that year group of Chinese drywall, be cognitive, because that could be your Waterloo, okay? There was an insulation, I think it's called UPIF, that was used for a short amount of time. It was sprayed in walls. That stuff is like really toxic. They banned it in Canada, they banned it in the United States. If you see like spray foam in an older house, like just question it. I know there's spray foam in everything now, and they're probably going to find the same thing out about that stuff later. But I'm not sold on the whole spray foam insulation because you can't get it back off. But be careful of that. It can be a surprise. And same thing with asbestos, right? Asbestos is one of those everybody wants to argue about. We have a lot of asbestos siding houses here, which I don't have a problem with asbestos sided houses. As long as you don't break it, it'll last a long time. I've owned a few of them. You can encapsulate it with vinyl siding instead of ripping it all out. But a lot of insurance companies don't like it. So there's really, it's that. Whether it's safe, cool, insurance company doesn't like it. It's kind of like aluminum wiring, where, yeah, it works and it's been there a long time, but insurance companies just don't like it. Sometimes they catch on fire, sometimes they don't. Also know the difference between multi-strand and single-strand aluminum, because service wires versus not. Totally different ball game with aluminum. Some people don't know that, and sometimes it costs you thousands. I told a story about that where a home inspector didn't know the difference between multi-strand and single-strand aluminum, and they tried to make it to where we couldn't get insurance on the house. False stucco. Okay, that was another one. Like, it was this faulty stucco years ago, so don't buy a house with that, because you'll be in for it. So false stucco, Google that one. Can't talk about all this in a 20-minute video. Bad windows, talked about that too. Bad windows, insurance is going to be a problem within 2 miles of the water, and or like the Gulf, and your heating bill is going to be through the roof, and everybody's like, oh, I like them because they're old and beautiful. No, okay. Resellability, good windows, storm windows, insulated windows, they're awesome. They keep the sound out, they keep the heat and AC in. They're worth the investment. Sometimes the insurance company is going to make you do it anyways because there's no like wind mitigation. They're just going to make you replace the old glass to like really strong hurricane windows. They're worth it here. When you stare down the barrel of 130 mile an hour wind hitting your window, okay, like this guy right there on that window coming down that road, storm windows are worth every penny. I saw mine flexing, and I thought the window was going to blow out, and it was 130 mile an hour winds out there. Okay, that is scary when you've got your family in the living room. So get good windows. Just do it. They're expensive. And try to buy a house with good windows so you don't have to pay for that. Okay, bad lots and weird housing layouts. This is those two ones with a half this and a half that, and they're dirt daubered on, as my mom would say. Be aware of those, okay? Because the resale is going to be whoa. And then if you ever have to fix stuff like plumbing and stuff like that, and there's this wonky whatever, just be cognizant that you're buying a property that's different than all the rest. And sometimes different than all the rest is not great. And especially with weird lot lines, like spherical with a hard angle, and you don't have enough setback to really build anything like a porch or a garage. And when you go to resell that property, the next person's going to ask the same questions. If they're worth their salt, their agent's going to ask those questions. So be cognizant of that. And it's hard to talk about all this in 20-something minutes. But that's really the gist of it. I got a whole list here. I wish I could talk more about it. But just do your inspections. Don't buy odd properties. Don't buy ugly properties. Don't buy ugly houses. And people say, well, what is the definition of ugly house? You look at it and it just looks like, huh? You know? Like what? Like... And the lot's like weird and it's different than all the other houses. Just don't buy those. Unless you get them super cheap. I mean, well below cash flow value, okay? Then you can buy those. But I've bought one time and I made money on it, but I bought it so stinking cheap. Why did I buy it stinking cheap? Because it was ugly. So just be cognizant of that. Comment down below if you've got anything to add to this so everybody can understand this. Because buying a house is tricky. Especially right now when they're so expensive. Everything's so expensive. It just keeps going up and up and up. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below. And I'm going to make some more never buy videos like on the beach and in the mountains and things like that. Hopefully this helps you out. I'll see you guys later.